Hello, and welcome to another episode of the STEM Confidence Podcast. In this episode, I want to talk about the elephant in the STEM room, imposter syndrome. I believe that any person has found themselves experiencing imposter syndrome at least once in their lifetime. And therefore, STEM professionals are, of course, not an exception to this rule. However, I want to start this episode from the basics, in the case someone doesn't know what imposter syndrome is. So, the definition offered by Wikipedia is the following: Imposter syndrome is a psychological occurrence in which people doubt their skills, talents, or accomplishments and have a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as frauds. Despite external evidence of their competence, people experiencing this phenomenon do not believe they deserve their success or luck. Alright, so after the official definition, here comes my definition. So, imposter syndrome is basically a feeling of complete incompetence and not knowing how you will measure up to the expectations and standards set by your peers and profession. I've been thinking about imposter syndrome a lot throughout my career, and also I've been battling it and facing it in many different stages of both my education and professional career. First of all, as a student, when you all of a sudden face objectively very complex topics that you are supposed to learn and to understand, then when it escalates to procrastination as an attempt to basically escape and ignore the fact that you are feeling it. And then, once you become a fully educated professional and you naively start believing that your brain will finally shut up and accept that you are actually a person who knows what they are talking about, it hits you just when you need to talk about your work to other people. What feels especially intimidating in the STEM field is that we are trained to find the flaws in our thinking. And I don't want you to get me wrong, since I believe that this is actually a good thing. It basically allows us to develop better products, better code, do better science, and so on. However, for some reason, we tend to apply that same judgment when it comes to people. We expect people to just know stuff. And in the STEM field, we often don't know the stuff. This is kind of the whole point. We often expect people, including ourselves, to possess sort of an encyclopedic knowledge and flawless understanding of very complex subjects. In the STEM field, however, the pursuit of knowledge is very ongoing and very dynamic, and we are constantly faced with new challenges and questions, so that it is perfectly normal not to have all the answers. After these introductory thoughts, I really want to share with you some tips that help me manage the imposter syndrome in many stages. So, the first tip that I have for you is detaching your work from your worth. This is something that many people face, and it often has its roots into something more complex than the actual imposter syndrome. One effective strategy is to seek support from mentors or colleagues who can provide guidance and reassurance. Working with a professional in the field might help you overcome it. Because actually, having someone to talk to about your experiences can help put things into perspective and remind you that you are not alone in facing those challenges. The second tip that I have for you is to quantify your learning process. For some reason, STEM professionals tend to measure things, but we often don't have a physical manifestation of our work until the very late stages of the project. I want you to use this ability to measure stuff in your favor. Measure how much actual work you've done and see that even though you don't have a final result that you expected, there is still progress being made by seeing how much you have learned throughout the process. Also, what I like to do is to actively try to cultivate a growth mindset and recognize that failure and setbacks are just a natural part of this gigantic learning process. And I know that this is easier said than done, but once you get used to doing it, it gets much better. This means that instead of viewing mistakes as a reflection of your abilities, you see them as opportunities for growth and improvement. I really want to encourage you to celebrate your successes, no matter how small, and remind yourself every day of the progress that you've made along the way. And the last piece of advice that I have is to practice self compassion and being kind to yourself. Remember that it is okay to feel uncertain or insecure at times, and that feeling so doesn't actually diminish your worth or capabilities. A good exercise is to treat yourself with the same compassion and understanding that you would offer to a friend facing some similar challenges. Finally, admitting what we don't know is often the very first step toward discovery and innovation. And this is why I believe that embracing this humility and recognizing that learning is a lifelong journey can actually help us alleviate the pressure to be perfect. And in a more broader sense, it helps us foster a more supportive STEM community. Remember that whatever challenges you are facing, you are not alone in it. There are always people who are willing to listen and help. Thank you for listening, and until next time. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you are ready to elevate your communication skills and transform your data into valuable insights, schedule a free discovery call on the link in the description.